encourage either lawyers, a lot of students to think about taking leave late or actually applying.
Down, so I'll carry her. Hi everyone, thank you for coming. My name is Elisa Derrick. Do you need me to talk into it? Oh, okay. For the recording. Just for the recording? Okay. Hello. Come this way. Oh.
That's what you see.
Oh, is this what they're all seeing?
Yeah, that's
so
what's being recorded.
Can they hear me now? Like a TV commercial. Okay. So my name's Elisa Derrick. I helped to kind of organize this event with FNSA. So I guess kind of a bit of backstory with this. I'm a criminology third-year major, double minor First Nation Studies, Women's Studies, with an intended master's in criminology or public policy. So one of the main reasons why I wanted to do this event is because I often find that I am A, the only Aboriginal student in my classes, or B, I've recognized that a lot of students don't have the connection with an Aboriginal student, an Aboriginal community, that they're often getting their degree and leaving and working with Aboriginal people and not having kind of that conversation, that dialogue that we need to have, whether it be about Aboriginal youth, generational healing, and then our last one with the Aboriginal women in the criminal justice system. And now, just before we start, I wanted to recognize a lot of the losses that have been happening in the community. In my own local community in Prince Rupert, we've had someone in my graduation class who is Aboriginal, young male, pass away a couple days ago, as well as a second death has surfaced today, actually, with a second body coming up shore. And so I'm actually going to, couldn't have it any more perfect. I'm going to have my mom to do an honoring song for these youth, and my little sister's going to stand up here before we start. Thank you.
Skalautana, Kwiko Shamain, Anhat Squalowin, to Squile, to Seats. I'm honored from Elisa to ask me to come and sing a song and honor the youth. They are our leaders, and I find with my son that I try to mentor and teach him the best way that I can. And Elisa was telling me about the deaths in her community. And it's very sad to hear of so many young children that they've been hurt so bad that all they can come to is suicide. And not growing up in a healthy community. And I find that is the biggest resource that we need to have, is to have our children grow in a healthy, traditional way. And I do my best to teach my children the Coast Salish teachings, and I'm going to sing a song. It's a memorial song, and it's an honor song to honor the strength that the people have, and it'll memorialize the people that have been so hurt that's the only way that they could come is through suicide, which is sad. hear what's going on, and I'm just honored to be here and share that with you guys. And I'd like, the people in the criminal justice program and people in the social work program, the work that they do to try and help mentor the young children is very important. And it's good to see. And it's true what Elisa is saying, that there is, when you're in class, you are usually the only Aboriginal student. So it's really hard to get your voice out there and to hear. And we are seeing more First Nations people in school and moving on to higher education. And I have a few friends here, and it's good to see them. And we are getting out there, and we're getting into the workforce, and moving forward and moving past and healing through the colonial times that we have faced in the past 500 years. And thank you. I'd just like to thank you all for being here and supporting Elisa in what she does with her education.
Thanks, Mom.
There's 2 seats right there. I'm sorry, we're going to have to spread you out a little bit.
There's just some cameras that you have to just not be in front of. So.
It's okay, we're going to go. You can come. Thanks, Dad. We're talking to their back by being over here, so it's easier for us to talk behind you.
Is this for to talk about?
Yeah. It's easier to be behind them because we're getting your back if you're over there.
Can I just pass this around you? Okay, so if you guys are kind of wondering why we're trying to make room for these for the camera, is we're doing a partnership with UBC Learning Circle, and so I'm going to introduce Crystal, and she's going to explain what this partnership is. And Gerald, I'm going to have to get you to move. You're in front of the camera.
You're in front of the camera.
I'm in front of the camera. I'm so sorry.
Okay.
You might want to move over a couple seats.
Yeah, because I can.
Yeah, perfect. So she's going to go over the kind of the house rules of it and what it is, and yeah, so there you go.
Okay. Okay, so what we're looking at for tonight is Elisa and I have been doing some partnerships. We're kind of building some bridges between Simon Fraser University and the University of British Columbia Learning Circle. And the reason why we have the cameras in the room is because we're recording tonight's session for the purposes of learning. And this is our first event that we've actually have a live audience in addition to people connected. What you're seeing up here is a recording. There is people from communities in Kispiox in the north, and I believe we have Newchawnoth on Vancouver Island via the video conference unit. In addition to that, what you don't see is on my laptop right there, we also have people and some communities tied in on the computer. So what you're seeing is technology working, and with this partnership, there is some rules that we're going to have to go over. And One of them is the recording of the session is, unfortunately, we don't have an opt-out for people for when you ask a question, especially in the rooms and on the video conference unit. So hopefully everybody's okay with being recorded in the rooms. And if not, unfortunately, we don't have an alternative other than to not participate, not participate. But our apologies for that. In addition to that, everybody has their video conference units turned off. Stephen, can you please flash the other two rooms that are participating right now so you get an idea of, yes, this is technology and people participating on the island and in the north. So people will be joining us through those rooms. So for the people in the rooms, just so you understand, there's about 50 people in this room here that you're not seeing. You're seeing the panels right here, but there's about 50 people out there. I did a quick count. So in addition to that, the Adobe Connects, I'd like to welcome all of you. And thank you, Elisa, for working with the UBC Learning Circle and tying us into tonight's event.
Thank you. Okay, so now we can actually start the event, and we'll start with the panelists each introducing themselves, what kind of brought them to their journey here and what they're doing and what organization that they're with, and then we'll go into questions. And please, at any time, if you guys would like to interject and have questions, please just raise your hand, and we can have a volunteer come up and get the question, and we can read it. And for that reason is so that we can also type the question to the people who are on Adobe Connect as well.
And if there is a question for the Adobe Connect, I will actually repeat the question. So if you type it into the system, then I will, one of the panelists will be able to answer it. Thank you.
So I don't have to hold this or anything? No?
No, I don't.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. My name is Constable Steve Hanuse. I'm just Steve Hanuse for my family members and friends. I am a member of the Vancouver Police Department. I'm in my 22nd year. I'm also in Namagis First Nation. My family's from Alert Bay. I was born and raised in the Lower Mainland, went to school in Burnaby. Spent most of my life here, although I did spend many summers up in Alert Bay going to the Longhouse with my aunties and learning the culture in that way. But like a lot of urban youth, I was primarily raised here and out of the culture, out of my own culture. And so it was, I don't know if it was typical, but growing up in the 70s, in my situation, I can certainly say was not a very good environment to grow up in. Alcoholism just resulting from the residential school system. My stepfather and my mom went through the residential school system, and I saw the results of it, and I was raised in the results of that. So I spoke to a class earlier today, so if I lose my voice, that's why. But I still recall, like many other Aboriginal youth of my day, and now still growing up and not knowing what I was having for breakfast or what was for dinner, or if it was rice and fish again for dinner. That was just life as I knew it. But managed to work my way through that, and I think in my situation, I was able to glom onto some mentors early on in my life that helped me through and see a different way of life. And I often remember, I was listening to a song on the way into work today and thinking, I distinctly remember closing my eyes and hoping I'd open them and things would be different. But they weren't. But you had to work my way through all that, and so at the time it was my girlfriend, and her family took me in and basically showed me another way, showed me how to be proud, how to just work hard in school, work in the workforce. We worked early in the morning before we went to school, and just gaining those values that I wasn't getting at home. And so I couldn't be more fortunate to have had that opportunity, and it's one of those things that's on my checklist that I need to go back and thank that mother for what she did to me and the opportunity she gave. So out of that, I gained. I was one of the first one in my family to go into university and graduate from university and do well. And while that was good, I still missed out on a lot of cultural things because I grew up in the Aboriginal in the urban setting and away from my community. So through university, moved on, and was in criminology as well, and not with any intention of becoming a police officer. I wasn't really sure. I certainly remember, in my family situation, not like a lot of Aboriginals at the time were just wary of police officers, and they weren't someone to be trusted. And distinctly remember that because I had an older brother that was always in trouble, and he would be the one running, and I was just a bystander watching this, but I still distinctly remember that. And so it wasn't until probably about third year university I ran into a fellow who's actually my inspector now in Vancouver, and we were classmates at Douglas College in SFU, and he said, "You've got to give this a try. It's a great job and very rewarding and exciting, and every day is a different day." And so I thought, you know what, I put my application in and started thinking about it more, and actually it moved very fast through the process, and I was very close to being hired, and I stopped and had to step back and think if this was really what I wanted to do. After 22 years, I can honestly say this was, I never regret one thing. It was from the early 90s till now, it's been a rewarding thing. Just like I said, every day is a different day. You never knew what you're getting into each and every day. And you honestly get out there, and I think most of us do get on the job with the intention of helping people. And from where I am to where I am now, it's come full circle. So I think it's, we kind of losing my train of thought here, but just moved through, and I think early on, of course, I was identified as an Aboriginal. You're an Aboriginal and you're a police officer. We'd like you to do this, and we'd like you to get involved in this community and in your community. And at the time, I was like, no, you know what? I'd like to become a police officer and just become competent at my job first before I have something to offer. I didn't think I have anything to offer, and there's still times today where I'm like looking at this panel going, wow, am I worthy of being up here? I don't know, but and do I have something to offer? But so early on, I just wanted to just become a police officer and become competent and help people. And so spent a lot of my early years just doing general patrol duties and responding to calls, and I think I still remember the first family trouble call, or family dispute call, where I walked in, and it was, and alcoholism was the main factor in this, and walking into that house, and just, it brought me back to when I was 9 years old, like that, just the smell of the stale beer bottles, and it was a real shock to the system, but I mean, you worked your way through it, and that's when you knew, you know what, that's why I'm here, that's why I'm doing this job, so I can help this young family and help them work through this, and help the kids that are involved in this to know that there is a better way, and that there are people out here who want to help you. So that was, and I'll never forget that, being shipped back in time. So I worked through there, and then I worked, I think probably about 13 years in general patrol, and then I went to the dog section, which was a phenomenal place to work. Just me and my dog, and I could be grumpy and he didn't care, and he was never grumpy, always tail wagging, and I was always right, so it was perfect situation. And high stress job, but again, like a lot of people come into this job for different reasons. Like I've always been involved in athletics and a bit of an adrenaline junkie, so that was huge for me, being in the dog section, because you got to go to every big call, get involved in everything, and so that's where, that was what drew me to there. So 7.5 years, and I always say that's my second favorite place that I've ever worked in the department. Now, where I work now is by far my favorite place and most rewarding. I'm the liaison officer for the Musqueam Reserve, Musqueam Indian Band, and so I've been there for almost 3 years now, and it's finally, coming up to after I came out of the dog section, I said, what, I think I'm ready. I think I have something to offer and can be a mentor to kids and to communities and help the community, and what better place to go, because Rick was already in the urban setting. So I took Musqueam, and that opportunity came up, and phenomenal place to work. I'm not sure if everyone knows where Musqueam is within the city. It's out towards UBC, and I always tell other members and my family, it's like working in a small town. And I'm the sheriff in the town. Everyone knows me, and I know everybody and know all their families and know all the kids in the daycare, and that's the most rewarding part, is just getting to know everybody in the community, and that makes such a huge difference in everything that I do, because I have that personal relationship. It's not someone showing up at your door with a uniform and with authority saying, okay, this is what's going to happen. It's more of a give and take, and let's sit down, let's discuss. I know what's going on. I know you, you know me. What can we do to resolve this? And so that's one of the main advantages to my job, and just getting to know, being able to be there to mentor the kids. I help coach soccer teams down there. I play soccer with the older guys, which was huge. As soon as they saw that I was, I could play soccer with them, and it took me a while to keep up with the young guys, but I just used body position and smarts and was able to compete with them. And so that went a long way to gaining just gaining their trust and becoming one of the community. And all it takes is just being there and caring and listening, and actually sitting down with community members, with elders and kids, sitting down with the kids at the breakfast club. We have breakfast club every morning before they go off to school, where the elders make their lunches, make their breakfasts, and then they go off to school. And I make a point of being there every morning to say hi to the kids, and never forget the first time I showed up there, that they're looking at me and going, oh, and just like, hey cop, what are you doing here? And then I just make light of it, and by the end of the week, they're going, hey Steve, how you doing? And it's just turned just like that, just because I'm there every day, and now it's come to hugs, and they're happy to see me, and they brighten up my day. And it's, I can't say enough about the work I do. And I've said this, my bosses, I said, if you could have this in every community and commercial drive and in every part of the city, it would just be phenomenal, because, having that personal relationship with everyone that you work with and interact with in your community is huge. So I think that is about where I am at right now, and where I've got to now. And so we'll turn it over to Rick Lavelle.
I'm Constable Rick Lavelle. I'm Cree. I'm from Manitoba. I've been a police officer for around 9 years, 4.5 years in patrol, 4.5 years working in Aboriginal policing as the liaison for the Vancouver Police Department. Listening to Steve, pretty much sounds like he was relating a lot of my life growing up. I think that with the residential school fallout, that reflects a lot of our family upbringing. So I won't go into detail because it'll make me really sad. But I started with the RCMP in North Vancouver, and I gravitated towards Aboriginal policing. And from day one, they almost had me pigeonholed as, oh, you're Aboriginal, you're going to be going into Aboriginal policing. But in fact, it was something I just gravitated to anyway. I was the only one that had ever patrolled the Mission Reserve and the Musqueam, or not Musqueam, the Tsleil-Waututh Reserve without having to be there to attend a call, so I actually got to know people. It was a little boring over there for me, and I had my sister who works with the VPD as a constable, so I ended up jumping ship after a year and a half with the RCMP and joining the VPD, and the same thing happened. I ended up working in District 4 and spending a lot of time patrolling Musqueam, even when there weren't calls to go to, but when calls would come up, my partner and I would take the calls and go down there. A lot of people would tend to not want to take calls down there for whatever reason, and maybe not feel safe there as well. But I always enjoyed patrolling the Musqueam Reserve, and I've always been active in the urban community, and got offered the position of the Aboriginal Liaison because of the work I was doing in community. And I do a lot of work with organizations like Urban Native Youth and Broadway Youth Resource Center, where those youth, although Broadway Youth Resource Center isn't specifically Aboriginal, 80% of the youth that utilize their services are Aboriginal and at high risk. And it's the same thing. They have a breakfast club, and like Steve was saying, when I first showed up there, it's like getting these youth to buy into the fact that you're there to help them and to serve them, and that you weren't there to arrest them for breaching or for a warrant. So now I'm at the point where they'll actually come up to me on the street, and I've got a great rapport with them. A lot of the kids call me Grandpa, and I'm not overly fond of that nickname, but it's out of love, so I own it. But yeah, I feel blessed to have the role that I work in and all our relations.
Good evening. My name is Pamela Shields. Thank you, Elisa, for putting this on. I'm extremely honored to be in front of you all, and thank you from the bottom of my heart. I'm the manager of Aboriginal Services for Legal Aid, and I'm going to be kind of like the home shopping network here with all my stuff. Have publications, will travel. So I have some information up here for the students, and I have some flash drives too. Additionally, I have my cards if you have any questions about what I do after I burn through this really quickly. But first of all, I'm an Indian residential school survivor. I was in St. Paul's Indian residential school on my reserve, the Kainai Reserve. Kainai people are part of the Blackfoot Confederacy in southern Alberta, and I'm the last of 3 generations of women to be in Indian residential schools, so I know firsthand about the impact of the schools, and I attribute, I think, most of the issues that Aboriginal people face today flow from the Indian residential school. Certainly colonialism as a whole, but definitely Indian residential school directly, and the intergenerational impact of the schools. I'm also a mother and a grandmother, and those also inform what I do with legal aid. I'm a lawyer. I'm also a visual artist, hence I need all these visual aids. But my job at Legal Aid comes from this report, Building Bridges, Improving Legal Services for Aboriginal People. And this report was written by an amazing Aboriginal lawyer, Ardith Wacom, and there's many wonderful recommendations in this report, and it's my roadmap for what I do and what I've been doing at Legal Aid for the last 5 years. And I've distilled my mandate down to 2 goals, reducing the number of Aboriginal kids in care and reducing the number of Aboriginal people in jails. And of course, those are definitely related. A big part of my job right now is the GLADU program, and I have more information, a GLADU primer, if you want more detailed information about what that program is. But essentially, GLADU is a Supreme Court of Canada case that interpreted a section of the criminal code that mandates that courts, when sentencing Aboriginal people, must recognize the overrepresentation and the systemic racism in our justice system and look at alternatives to jail. And these alternatives are about restorative justice. The courts are directed to consider alternatives to prison because clearly prison is not working for our kids and it's not working for the adults. And it's just Jonathan Rudin, who runs the Aboriginal Legal Services in Toronto, calls jails, especially youth in jail, just another Indian residential school system. And it's actually even worse. The numbers are worse than the Indian residential school system. So we're just continuing this cycle. So Gladue says, let's look at alternatives to imprisonment, and let's look at, and at the same time, healing is also about safety for our communities. It's not a get out of jail free card. It's about increasing safety in our communities and healing and stopping this cycle of imprisonment, this cycle of foster care. And the Gladue decision was recently interpreted and confirmed and affirmed in a decision last year called EPOLI. And I'm a lawyer, but I'm not some kind of nerd who likes reading case law. But I take heart. Every now and then I pick up EPOLI, and I just, like today I was reading it in preparation to speaking to you all. And you can turn to any page, and it's just incredible what the Supreme Court of Canada says in that decision. It talks about substance abuse and the loneliness of Aboriginal youth on a reserve, inhaling gasoline and attempting suicide because there is no hope. And lack of educational opportunities and poverty. And so I look at Gladue as an opportunity for fundamental change to our justice system and optimism. Really, I consider it an optimistic program for the courts and for our society. So I work with the Justice Institute to train Aboriginal justice workers to prepare Gladue reports for the court. So the courts aren't making these alternatives to jail blindly. They have information on this person that's before them because we're not all the same. Our circumstances are not the same. They might all flow from the same colonialist history, but we need to look at that individual and his circumstances and figure out a way to stop that person from getting into that cycle. And of course, if we start with youth, that's where we can stop it. So as I said, I have tons of information. I have my card, and I'm available anytime to email, by phone, in person, to talk to you if you're interested in hearing more, because I have a lot more to say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. My name's Steve Anderson. My hereditary background, you might be surprised, is largely European. But my great-great-grandmother, Laura Lyman, is Cree from Manitoba, and I think somehow that blood flows through me. I come here currently working as a probation officer, and I started in 1995 as a youth probation officer, and I think part of what I want to express is that what brought me to going into probation work is kind of how I was raised. I can't say I was raised as Aboriginal, but I do think some of the social values and the family values and the community values that I was raised by, it makes me second guess. Maybe I was. I do want to show some appreciation. My Aunt Carlene is here tonight. She's one of the women who's been very influential in my life and career decisions. She's retired SFU criminology professor by chance. So she surprised me with a visit, so thank you for being here. And I also want to thank Elisa, who I worked with at the Vancouver Aboriginal Friendship Center, for inviting me as well. So so what brings me here? So, having worked in probation and having grown up lived in various communities in Vancouver, but went to high school at University Hill, which even though we were very close to the Musqueam Reserve, there was probably only a couple Aboriginal students in the school. And growing up, I guess, in the 80s, and really what you saw was a lot of the negative stereotypes, and you hear things about wild parties at Musqueam, and there wasn't a lot of positive talk about the Aboriginal community. And so having my mother at the time, we were living up at UBC because she was a doctoral student, and she was doing her thesis on how to improve graduation rates for Aboriginal students through language acquisition. And part of her work was to work with the Musqueam. And so as a young teenager, that was kind of an early introduction to Musqueam and some of the families there. So I think that kind of had always been a small influence as I was looking to decide upon a career. I'd always been raised with concerns for social issues and justice, and had every intention to be a lawyer, but didn't have the intellectual discipline that Pamela had. So I had to look at other options, and probation has been a great option. So I worked in youth probation for 7 years, and part of that work involved working at the Aboriginal Services Unit with Ministry for Children and Family Development here in Vancouver, and so worked with a number of my clients were from the Britannia area, so a lot of Aboriginal youth there. And after 7 years of doing that, I had a bit of I got, I think, overly involved as I ended up fostering one of my youth, and so after the challenges of that, I realized, okay, I need to try a different approach. It was hard, and I'd been a basketball coach for a long time and have coached at a few different colleges, and so thought that rather than work from a corrections end, working from a punitive end. Which I would like to dispel. Probation isn't necessarily punitive. We'd like to think that we help people. I went back to doing community work, trying to work from a prevention end, trying to help people not get into problems with the law by giving them positive outlet through sport. So one of the programs I worked with was Night Hoops for a number of years, and so it has about 300 kids in Vancouver at different community centers, play basketball on Friday, Saturday nights, which are generally high-risk nights, and supervised by positive role models. And also had the pleasure to work at the Vancouver Aboriginal Friendship Center as a recreation supervisor for a couple years, which is where Elisa and I first met. And I think we have a common bond with wanting to help the community and see sport as a positive outlet to do that. Which brought me back to, after a 10-year break and doing community work, I went back to doing probation work, so now work as a probation officer, bail supervisor at the Northeast, Vancouver Northeast Probation Office on Commercial Drive. So, so hopefully I can be of some help tonight with giving some perspective on what probation officers do, and so part of what we're capable of doing and partly what we're limited by. So thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Please carry
Sorry,
on.
you've got your own.
Hi, my name is Flora Raynes. I am Secwepemc from the Interior Salishan Territory, from the Bonaparte Band. I'd like to thank the Coast Salishan for having us on their territory, and I'd like to thank Elisa Derrick for inviting me to be here. I'd like to give you a little background on myself and how I came to be where I am. So I won't tell you what year I was born. That's an unlisted number. However, it was during one of the scoops, and my mother, Mary Bridget Raynes, had gone to residential school, and I was removed from her care when I was 9 months old. In those days, they didn't have lawyers to assist them in court. At 15 months old, I was made a permanent ward and continued in the care of the ministry. I was fortunate to be raised in the same home as a birth brother. At that time, I was the youngest of 6 siblings. And I had a sibling out in New West, but we weren't all placed together. They actually had us all separated. Between 9 months and 15 months, I was in 5 placements. At 15 months, I joined my brother. It was a German foster home. And so meine erste Sprache was Deutsch. So my first language was German. And however, I've lost that German because at the age of 4, we were no longer allowed to speak German at home. So I then had to learn how to count in English. And even in those days, I would keep going to my mom and telling her, this language is crazy. It makes no sense. It just doesn't have, I didn't use the word logic, but it didn't have the right rules for speaking. And it made much more sense in German. But I no longer have my German language. I no longer have my Shuswap language. In this foster home I was brought up in, I had been exposed to abuses that went around the medicine wheel. I was physically abused, sexually abused, emotionally abused, and spiritually, ritualistically abused. At the age of 13, I chose not to be physically or corporally punished anymore. I figured getting hit 99 times was enough. And so I chose not to go home one night and went to the police, who were looking for me, and just said, I'm not going back. Social worker picked me up, and after some long discussions and trying to jump out of his car on the highway because he insisted on returning me home, he finally took me serious. Mind you, it's very difficult to jump out of a sports car with your feet straight in front of you. Virtually impossible. I tried. But I was determined I wasn't going back. So I went to a variety of different placements. From that point on, foster homes and group homes, and at the age of 16 I decided, no, that's enough, and I wanted to move in with my sister. So I moved in with my sister, and there was, since we had only just met when I was 10 and she was 12, it was us getting to know each other. And it was difficult because you've got 2 teenagers and a lot of, well, we didn't party in the house. We were smart about that. But we went out to the Biltmore quite frequently. And So I had my encounters with the other side of the law. And but by the time I was 18, I decided that I would return to school. I had dropped out when I was in grade 11 because, again, as Alyssa had mentioned, I was the only Aboriginal. I was frequently at the vice principal or the principal's office almost on a daily basis because I wasn't producing the work that I was required to do, but I didn't have the money to buy the tools to do it with, and I had no source of income other than the social worker who wouldn't foot the bill for a rug hook, different things. So also I was, there was a group of girls that were very, would frequently comment upon my clothing. In care, we were allowed to have 2 pairs of pants, and I had a pair of jeans and a pair of dress pants, and of course that was all I had. And so I was very limited on what I could wear, and I would often receive comments on that. I had been called out for fighting, well, for, what was it, the principal, vice principal had said, I understand from one of the girls here that you threatened to fight these 5 girls. And I looked at him and I started to laugh. And I said, you know, you have me down here every morning, you tell me how intelligent I am and how I would be the feather in your cap. Well, he didn't put it that way. I would be the first Native person to graduate from his school if I stayed in school. And I says, so you tell me I'm intelligent and you tell me I called these 5 girls out to fight? Right. So anyway, I dropped out. But one of the things that my foster mother had given me, the one that in my heart was Mom, was a belief that, well, was a value. She would tell me that because I was Aboriginal, to get the same job as a non-Aboriginal person, I would have to have more education and more experience than the non-Aboriginal person. That didn't make sense to me, and I mulled it over so many times, and I went back to her and asked her to repeat it, and she would, and I thought, that shouldn't make a difference, the color of my skin. Yeah, it's what's here and what's here. However, when I had dropped out, I decided to return to school. My lifestyle wasn't conducive to school. I dropped out 2 more times, but I was determined. I went through what was called the BTSD, Basic Training and Skills Development, Level 4 at King Edward Campus, and I completed that program. And then I went on to Langara. In 1978, don't start counting, I got my Bachelor of Arts and Science with a major in psychology and a minor in sociology. Now, what is a Native girl going to do with that? I tried to get jobs. I didn't have the experience. Didn't have the experience. I would say, but I'm smart, I can learn. You show me what the job is, I can do it. You know, I've demonstrated I have the ability to learn. No, you don't have the experience. How am I going to get experience, I asked, unless somebody were to give me a job. But I couldn't get a job. And So I was down to stuffing envelopes. Yep, I stuffed envelopes. I went door to door enumerating for BC Directory. I took whatever job I could find, and they were small minimum wage jobs. I got depressed. I stopped looking. I started volunteering at a seniors lounge, and from that I got a small job coordinating volunteers for a seniors lunch program. But something kept nagging at me. One of the things, another value that my mother had instilled in me was, when you get older, go back and help your people. Go back and help your people. Help the parents so that their kids don't go into care. Go back. Now, how am I going to do that? I've got this degree, which I was trying to hide at that time in this small apprentice I could make it, and put it in obscure places in my resume, because now I'm looking for jobs and I'm told I'm overeducated. So I was overeducated but under skilled. So go beat that one. So I did. I found a job program, and it taught skills such as communication skills, anger management. Although I wasn't very much of an angry person, but I realized I was one of those silent brewers. And I also needed to do a lot of emotional development, because in those days I was very flat affectually. I didn't laugh, I didn't cry, I didn't get angry, I didn't express happiness. Those were all things that I could get hit for when I was younger. So when I was in this program, I didn't even realize I did this. I was laughing, and then I would put my hand up to my mouth and I would hide my laugh, and I would look around to see who'd noticed that I was laughing. Someone pointed out that I did this. I wasn't aware of it. And it was, I remember laughing one time when I was younger and getting hit across the face. And because my mouth was in a full laughter, my mouth was bleeding. So I was told, you have a horrible laugh. So I tried different laughs, and I would get hit for those. So laughing was not a very positive experience. And I worked on it, and I worked on it. And now I'm very proud to admit that I don't care. When I laugh, and everyone in the room can hear me laugh. And I sometimes even throw my head back and just pound the table. I just laugh so hard. But along with that laughter came other expressions. I was able to feel happy. I was able to feel sad. And I went through a lot of development in that job training program. It had 3 job placements that I could do, and that was 2 months at each place. The first placement that I took was, I thought I'd be good at working with kids. And so I worked at a preschool, and I really enjoyed it. But it wasn't quite what was driving me. So then I tried Native Courtworkers, and I called them and offered 2 months of free work. And they turned me down. Can you believe that? They turned me down. So I went back to my supervisor at the training program and said, they turned me down and I really want to work there. And she said, well, why'd they turn you down? They said, well, because it takes so long to train a practicum student, and then by the time they're trained, they're off. And she said, well, then you've got another practicum coming, offer them that. It's a 2.5 months. So I called them back and said, I can give you another 2.5 months, but I have to go back to class for 1 week between times. And what did they say? They turned me down. They turned me down. So I called the executive director, because you don't just talk to them down below. I went up and I went up and I went up to the executive director and I talked to him and I said, I can offer you this, this, and this. And he said, no. He says, I got to go back down. No, they don't want one, so sorry, can't do it. And I was angry, because I could now feel anger. But I was also a very diplomatic anger. So I said to him, one day, I'm going to work for you. So here I am. 1 year after I finished that job training program, I did a year of burnout on UI. And they, at the Friendship Center, they had this job placement place, and it had just opened, and I went in there looking for a job because I got that last letter, your checks end soon, you know. So figured, oh, I better go. And I wanted to get a job at DERA because I had heard about that job, and I thought that would be a good place to work. But someone told me, I put my application in, someone told me, they've got someone on the ins that they're applying for that. And I had been offered a job placement, a possibility of applying for training at Native Courtworkers. I said, no, I don't want to work for them anymore. And then I went home and I thought, oh, one of my mother's teachings, don't put all your eggs in one basket, don't put all your eggs in one basket. So I went back and I put the application in, and the next morning I was hired because they could see. So I was hired and I was trained as a youth family court worker. It was a 1-year training program in June 1990 to June 1991. And I wanted to work with youth. Do things go your way? I got trained for family. So I figured, well, it's coming the way it needed to come, the way my mother wanted it to come. Go back and help your people. And so I started at family court, and I've worked at family court from June of 19. I got hired after the training program ended for an interim term. June 1991, I got hired October 25th, 1991, and have been there since. And it was the biggest joke. The family court worker is in the family way. So I took 6 months off for the birth of my son, who is now 20 years old. And I was at family court until September of 2000, so that's 10 years. Then I went to adult court from September 2000 until February of 2004, where I was asked to go to youth court for a very short period, 5 months, to cover for somebody that was on leave. So I've been there ever since, and I don't know how to count to 5 in English, I tell you, because I'm still working there. Someone told me it's 2013 now. So I think we've passed the 5-month mark. And the challenges of each of the courts, in family court, It was volume. It was really high volume. In those days, about 49.7%, well, this is stats from 1999, which is the year before I ended, and they had gone down during that period from 1990 to 2000. It was 49.7% of the children in the care of the ministry were Aboriginal, and that was out of 12,000 something children. I understand that the stats are not much different nowadays. They're higher, I understand, from a little prompting of someone in the audience here. And so things are similar. I then went on to adult court. One of the challenges there again was volume. And I remember covering the court list, the court building. There's 3 floors. There were 500 something names on the court list, and some of those names may have been repeated because it goes by information number. And over 100 of those were Aboriginal, so like 125. So it was about 25% to 30% of the court list was Aboriginal. I came to youth court. The challenge there is establishing a trusting relationship with somebody who's of 2 generations, kind of, younger than you. And I was a new face. So, of course, I was taken to be one of them. But with some persistence and always showing up and getting down to the cells, I've kind of cracked that door open. And of the 3 courts, the one that I found the most rewarding, youth court. And the reason for that is the youth are more open to listening. In adult court, it's when I would try to offer some assistance, I know all about it. You don't need to tell me anything. I've been there, I've done it. I've been doing this for the past 10, 15, 20, 25 years. There's nothing you can tell me. So it's very, I've been there, I've done it. But even despite that, I would sit down with them when I had a break in between, or if they were waiting for the court thing to get called up, and I would sit down and I say, oh, I noticed you're up for this, how's it going with that? And, and then I remember one of my more vocal, I don't need your help guys, he had told me, well, I think I'm going down for a long time. And so we talked a bit about what his case was. And I said, what's your record like? And he told me, and I'm like, oh, well, you know what? You can go in front of the judge and you can say, I'm going to. Or you can go in front of the judge and say, I have done this, I have done that, I have these connections in the community. In other words, don't put me to jail because I can be successful in the community. And on my little business card, all the way around it in tiny little print, were all these different places we talked about. And I said, oh yeah, that's a great place. Yeah. Oh, do you know about this place? And I'd write it on my business card. And I gave him the business card. It was just packed with all these referral places. I figured, he's never going to call any of them. And then, it was more than 6 months later that his court date was. I came up to him and, wow, what a difference. I didn't recognize him. He was, he was dressed sharply. His shoulders were back. His hair was trimmed. His complexion was clear. he just looked totally different. And so he said, "Oh, hi." And I says, "Hi." I says, "Gee, I'm sorry, I don't recall who you are." "Oh," and he told me. Well, he had started off with one phone call, then made another, and he ended up going into counseling. He went into treatment. He now had a job. And so the result was where he could have gotten, 6 years easy jail time, he ended up getting, I think it was a 12 or 18-month community, or now my adult court terminology.
Conditional sentence order,
Thank
maybe?
you. I'm thinking youth court, deferred custody and supervision order. And I knew they were called differently. So things can change over that period of time. One word that you say could make a difference in that life. I frequently walked up Commercial Drive and been stopped by somebody and said, "Oh, do you remember me?" You know, it was, and this is at a time when I left that person, I thought, oh, nothing ever is going to work here. And so they had taken that piece of advice and they had gone on with their life and they turned it right around. So things can change, and that's the thing that I've noticed in myself. I've changed, and so therefore I have a strong belief others can change. Thank you.
Okay, so before we move on, through Adobe and through my cell phone, there's been a lot of requests because there are youth in the room and they are leaving soon, is to kind of express having the panelists working with youth and telling you about their stories to kind of have a youth perspective. So I'm quickly going to give maybe like a 5-minute blurb, I swear, kind of how I came here. So much of what you guys read in your textbooks or you read in studies or what they've talked about, whether it be sexual abuse, living in poverty, substance abuse, alcoholic homes, you name it, every stereotype, every experience that is really negative to Aboriginal people I've faced. I grew up with 10 siblings, 5 on my First Nations side and 5 on my Vietnamese side. I grew up being raised in a skip generation home with my grandmother. I would not change a thing. It was absolutely amazing. I was taught to be proud of culture and I was taught to love it. And I was brought to many ceremonies and many potlatches and feasts and more funerals than I can count on all my hands. And at some point in my history, this changed. I would say a bit in middle school. To the point where I knew things were bad when I was getting choked up to a locker by 4 Aboriginal young girls in my community, actually, for being an apple. And I had no idea what this meant. I was like, cool, I'm a fruit. No idea. So I actually didn't even learn what that was until I came to university 8 years later. And so there was a lot of bad things happening in my community, unfortunately, and so I was placed in care. I was placed in a Jehovah's Witness kind of cultural-based home, and coming from like an Aboriginal Vietnamese dominant culture, it wasn't really suitable for me, but that's okay. I definitely learned from it. I started living on my own when I was 14, 15, so I must have been like grade 10, grade 11. So rented out my little basement suite. I had my little fish bowl and, do my own grocery shopping. I definitely did by myself. And then unfortunately in my grade 11 year, I lost my father to suicide. My grandmother was diagnosed with cancer and my grandfather had passed away within 5 months of each other. And then I was really fortunate. I decided that summer I wanted to work because, of course, I needed to work to support myself throughout the school year. So I worked 3 jobs, and out of those 3 jobs, I had 2 days off for the entire summer. So what do I do for those 2 days? I go to Terrace and I go to a badminton camp. I was really passionate about badminton and I really loved it, and so I actually got a sponsorship with Victor Canada, and my coach kind of, do you want to come to Vancouver? Do you want to play badminton? I was like, okay, like this sounds pretty cool. Like, so I moved, packed up all my stuff, hopped on a Greyhound, came to Vancouver. I graduated, played in the Canadian Nationals for the past 4 years, won the BC Provincial Championships, cleaned the North American Indigenous Games, and then I had and then I jumped right into school when I was 17 because the deal with my coach was I couldn't keep playing badminton unless I went to school. So I actually went to Langara College, and for some reason in my mind, like, school was never a discussion in my family. I'm the first one to go out of 48 aunts and uncles on both sides. And so I was like, courses? Like, I have to take courses for real? So I enrolled into the criminal justice program at Langara College, and I went, I think, you stopped counting, but I think I went like 7 or 6 consecutive semesters straight, with my first break being a kidney transplant. So my mom that did the opening song, she's actually not my real mom, but she is my mom in the sense that she donated her kidney to me. Then I hopped on the train to go to SFU, and that's where I am now, and I'm really involved in the Aboriginal community, and I wouldn't have it any differently being an undergrad student at SFU because I have the hand-on experience, I have the education now, I have the community involvement, and I feel like that's it. So that's kind of a little bit about my story, and for the youth that are in the room, I really encourage you to keep going. It's a lot of hard work. You need to have a lot of resiliency and a lot of optimism, and I'm really fortunate to have met the 7 Aboriginal students at Langara College that I did, because they've now become my family, and they've, we each are on our different paths, but I pretty much rely on them. I rely on them to help me get through my degree. I rely on them for their support and their mentorship, and just a quick funny story. I mean, Steve and I think Cindy Allen is in the room right now. They met me when I was 17 years old, and I walked into Cindy's office, and I was like, okay, I'm ready. I'm ready to start volunteering. I'm ready to get involved in the community, and I got denied because I wasn't 19. So I came back again, and so I thoroughly enjoy working in that environment, and I love working with youth and building the partnerships that I am. So having said that, panelists have a list of questions. I know that Pamela, she can join in. She might not be answering all of them because she is going to be predominantly speaking about the Gladue case at the very end. And so having said that, I guess I'll read them the first question for you guys to listen to, and feel free at any point to raise your hands if you have any questions for any of them. Thank you. So both of you, so all of you guys have the questions, and the first one, I mean, a lot of these questions you guys have kind of answered through your story, but maybe you could find another way to elaborate on them. And the first one is, in your experience, what struggles have you seen Aboriginal youth face?
We're going to go through the panel, or just...
Yeah, or kind of individually, yeah.
Okay. Like you said, I think each and every one of us have gone through it already. Just your story is, it speaks volumes, right? Of what most of us have been up against: poverty, alcoholism, just having a roof over your head, food, all the basics of life. Having a loving family. I could say that in my situation, that's what it was, and in a lot of issues we deal with within the city, it's the same thing. Not having that the support system that's available to most people, and most people will take for granted. It's just not there. So I would say that's probably the biggest thing. And just living through, the residential school system. And I can honestly say, in my own situation, it wasn't brought up in the family. Like, we knew that was the the white elephant in the room, but we never talked about it. And I didn't know what my parents had been through. And it wasn't, I can honestly say, probably about 10 years ago when I thought, you know what, we didn't talk about it, but it suddenly dawned on me what my parents had been through, my stepfather, my grandparents had been through. And it suddenly realized, you know what, that's how I got to be in the situation I was in. And we've worked our way through it. And it's come to the point now where, you know, my mother is 73 now and still lives with the guilt of the situation that we were brought up in. And, you know, my siblings and I have sat her down and said, look, we understand now. We didn't then. Well, we were probably pretty angry at the time of what we'd been through growing up, but we understand, and we're okay, and we need you to be okay, and so that we can, and know that it stops here with our family, with my family. My kids are going to know what it's like to grow up in a loving family where there's support and everything you need to thrive. So that's one of the most important things for me.
Where do you start? Homelessness, poverty, racism. Consistent positive adult role models in their lives. A lot of the kids that I work with grew up in foster care. Some of them bounced around through 18 homes. You know, it's tragic. But those are the big three.
Yeah, it's just repeating that it is poverty. And I mean, I didn't graduate from high school. I got my GED, and I had a very loving stepfather, and so it seems like, and that's been my whole life is, but particularly when I was younger, is that that I just got thrown these lifelines. And that continues today. Like right now in my program, I have a retired judge. He's thrown me a lifeline, like it allowed me to continue. Frances Brosner right here, she's my GLADU coordinator. She's another lifeline. And so that if kids don't have that, then it's really, really tough to keep them out of the cycle.
I think in addressing this question, I think it's important also to acknowledge that, you know, we're discussing issues with why people are involved in the criminal justice system. So I want to acknowledge some balance in that there's a lot of very healthy, well-functioning, thriving Aboriginal people and families, and that's one of the things that I learned to dispel some of the stereotypes from working at the Aboriginal Friendship Centre, is that I saw and worked with and engaged in activities with a lot of really positive, thriving people. And, you know, so there is a balance there. So having said that, working in probation, a lot of our clients that we see are suffering from mental health issues, are suffering. Poverty is a huge problem. Substance use is a huge problem, and it's really, you know, often it's lacking the skill set and the capacity to get through life's challenges. And for youth, it's having those positive role models, those supports in the community. If you don't have that at home, finding the person or organization in the community that you can relate to, that you can find support in. So, you know, a big part of it is, I think, you know, panelists have talked about the homelessness and poverty and some of the things I'm repeating, but I also think the violence in the community is a really significant factor. A lot of the adult offenders that I have on my caseload have lived through a lot of violence in their lives. And I live in the Commercial Drive area, and I see that. You know, it's noticeable when the groups of youth are gathered around the Britannia School and are drinking and are fighting, and you know, it roams through the community. And I think for me, the violence is a really significant problem, and the impact that it has on people, both obviously physically, but also psychologically, when you feel that you have to put on a brave front, you feel that you have to be tough to be able to to live in your neighborhood. So I think that's something. So that kind of peer pressure and the importance of having a positive peer group and if you don't have that positive peer group, having adults you can reach out to, I think is really significant for Aboriginal youth in our community.
Hi. Well, I think Stephen here has been looking at my cheat notes.
Yeah, you've got more than me.
One of the things that I see that with the Aboriginal youth is a disconnection from their cultural foundation. And this is brought on, of course, by colonialism. So some of the other factors that are involved as well is a loss of their language, their indigenous language, and lack of that sense of belonging to their indigenous roots. The youth that I work with, approximately 50% of the youth I work with are in the care of the ministry. I would say that of the other 50%, at least half of those had been in the care of the ministry at some point in their lives. I would think that quarter is actually quite a bit higher. And I think that what Stephen was saying, parenting is one of the things, and that was great. We had good, strong parenting in our communities, and it wasn't this nuclear family parenting, it was community parenting. And where we've taken on, in the urban setting here, the colonial aspect of parenting, and that's in nuclear family, this is my family, don't you talk to my kid, give any direction to my kid, this is my child. Mind you now, I have, how many kids do I now have? I have over 200. I have 256 kids. So youth in foster care is a really big issue. Moving from home to home is another one, and that could be with their own parenting, their own parents moving from one community to another, from one home to another, having to get reestablished in schools. That's another issue. Or it could be moving in the care of the ministry from one home to another. I had one youth who was in 44 foster placements, and that was before I stopped counting. So school dropouts is another big one, and trying to get them back into the mainstream, or back into a school, because very few of the youth that I work with are in mainstream school. A lot of them are in alternative school programming. Why is it that our mainstream school programs are not accommodating to our children? FASD, fetal alcohol syndrome disorder, is another big issue that affects youth that are coming before the courts, and it particularly affects those youth who have high recidivism. They are affected by their parents drinking during their pregnancy. Mental challenges, which Stephen also looked at my notes on, is another big issue, and depression is one of those. And well, sometimes I have youth that find it very difficult getting up to go to school. You know, they want to sleep. They just want to sleep. Now, I tried to look at their schedule, their scheduling in their life. You know, are they staying up too late? What are they doing that they want to sleep all day? And then I remembered there was a time in my life when I could easily sleep 14 hours a day, 16 hours a day, and I was depressed and wouldn't acknowledge it. So we need some more, well, that comes later. Thank you.
So I know that just before we start the next question, we do have a representative from MCFD, and I know that we have 2 people here, maybe more from corrections. I know that someone from corrections does.
I ran a drop-in center, this is years ago, back in Edmonton in the inner city, and what I'm hearing now that I'm in the community here is it keeps cutting youth funding. I mean, I'm talking about UBC, I'm talking about where's against violence, their youth unit. They keep cutting it, and where's the stability? I mean, is there ever going to be stability in funding? I mean, you're telling these kids, well, come to our program, you know, and giving them something to do, an alternative to being on the corner of Commercial and Broadway or anywhere up and down, or the drop-in center at Britannia, where, I mean, my kids used to go there, and, you know, they actually started drinking there until I shipped them back to Edmonton, you know, and these are the things that, well, there's a little bit though, but these are some of the things that I'm hearing in the community, and I'm not even like working with youth, and yet we hear about these things. So do you think that there is ever going to be a time when the government is going to sit down and actually say, well, here's some funding, let's fix this problem? I know it's not going to be the fix, but at least it's an alternative until they can come up with a solution.
Hello. Hello. Hi. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah, you may have a question.
They can't hear those questions and those comments.
Green is on, right?
Do you want to they actually have?
Hi, Linus Lucas from Port Alberni area. Kind of wondering about
Okay. Oh wait.
youth
sorry.
in on the downtown.
Can you hold on
the
one
downtown
second?
area.
There's just a question happening in the room, and then we can jump back to your question. Is that okay? I'm so sorry.
Who are you talking to?
They can only hear me? Good thing this is a pilot project. Okay. So maybe, Crystal, the best thing to do is maybe they can ask the question, and then we can just type it as fast as we can in the computer, or I can.
No, but there's 2 different cameras happening here.
All right. Okay. Would you mind coming down? It's to the communities that aren't here that are being voiced in. I'm so sorry. Anyone that has a question, please don't want this to be a detriment to asking you.
I'm not sure if this is the answer, but I'm just.
Oh, yeah.
I'm just commenting on what I perceive. I've been working in the youth area for a little while. I'm a visiting research scholar from University of South Australia here at SFU. And in Australia, they have the Royal Commission on Aboriginal Deaths in Custody. Out of that volumes of reports, the only recommendation that they really looked at and seriously implemented was to build more police stations and more prisons. In Canada here, we've gone through numerous reports, numerous inquiries throughout the provinces. There's recommendations there. And the implementation of those recommendations, I was involved with the Aboriginal Justice Inquiry in Manitoba. And I think that we have to look back at why was the creation of the Northwest Mounted Police started. And like I said, I was just going through this book, The Wild Ride. And it was at one time to protect Indian people at that time, they're called Aboriginal people today, against alcohol, against all the bad influences that emerged with the creation of the country. And today, I think the police have gone away from that. Besides the protection of Aboriginal people, there was also the protection of the vast resources that a lot of the explorers had saw at that time. So unless we get, like they've done in Australia through their Truth and Reconciliation Commission, they've implemented the recommendations. They've not sat on them. They've not put them in shelves. They've implemented it. And if an institution like SFU or any other institution, post-secondary institution and beyond, would start doing that, I think there may be some answers that would emerge for the poverty reduction and all of those other kinds of issues that have escalated.
Thank you. I'm so sorry about that. So I guess if you guys wanted to maybe talk about or readdress Doug's question about the funding.
Yeah, I'm not sure you'll get any argument up here that we need more funding for all the programs. Ideally, we would, love to fund everything like that. I know we do the pulling together journey, and every year there's always a canoe family that has to scrape and save and do whatever they can to get into that journey, which is so valuable. And I mean, we'd love for everyone to. I don't know what to say to that, really. It's a no-brainer. Like, we do need more funding, and we can't keep cutting. But we keep hearing about the, dire circumstances we're in financially, but somehow we've got to find the funding. Because we're spending. If we're not spending it here, we're spending it at the other end in the prison systems, and it's not working.
Yeah, you referenced EASY, our Eastside Aboriginal Space for Youth. It's hugely successful. More than 40 youth a night utilizing the services. It's a safe space. These are youth you would see at East Broadway and Commercial hanging out and being subject to predators, gangs, what have you. And we won an award for that program. It's a partnership with the Vancouver Police Department and the Circle of Eagles Lodge Society, and National Crime Prevention Award. So the feds are telling us, great job. And but now it was like a pilot project, but they're not stepping up like they should be, because we've proven that the model works and giving us long-term funding. So we have to demand the federal government listen to us, because they seem to forget that they represent us, the people, and our voice, and they do what they please, no matter what we say. But we've proven through Idle No More that we can affect change, and we can come together as a community. But we can't just do it ourselves. We need everyone to kind of step forward and help us, demand. Like, the government knows it's right to keep this program going at all levels. So it's just nonsense to me that there's no funding to carry it forward. These kids are going to be back on the street in another month, and I've seen kids get out of the gangs, go get stable housing, get employed. I monitor all the youth that are in the program, and the interaction with the police went from way up here down to just a few problem youth that are actively participating in the program. So it's hugely successful. And it breaks my heart that these youth are going to feel let down, and that program's going to close down because the federal government couldn't step up and give us stable funding. That's my 2 cents.
I think that there is money. It's just that we're not a priority. And I see that again and again. I know there's money out there. It's just that we're not a priority. And I've identified that as a risk when I do in this GLADU program, is that we can make all the recommendations in the world for restorative justice and to go to this rehab and do this kind of treatment, but those treatment centers are getting cut left and right. So our recommendations that we make are ringing hollow if it doesn't complete the circle, if there's no, if there's lack of beds and lack of resources. So I'm very angry about it, quite frankly, and I'll say this again, there's money. It's just that we're not a priority.
Okay, yeah, I'm not sure if we want to go through each of these, or with each question it might make sense for the person who wants to answer it best. But yeah, you've hit on a key issue. Funding is critical to getting appropriate supports and interventions. And so, I've worked both in the for government, but also for nonprofits, and a huge problem is just the constant concern about where the next source of funding is going to come from. Is your funding going to be renewed? And the critical piece of that is the continuity for the youth that access the services, that benefit from the services, because whenever you shut down a program and they have to move on to the next, you lose that relationship. And having that continuity and developing the relationships, having that consistency, it's important for youth, it's important for all of us. So as far as building healthy communities, getting stable funding is important. And, I think clearly Rick's right. It takes political action. It takes people coming together and making sure the government understands it's a priority.
I remember back in the beginning of 1991, a judge had said in reference to an Aboriginal organization, I can't remember the names of these Aboriginal organizations. One pops up here and one closes there and another one pops up. And yes, if you look through our history of Aboriginal organizations in this urban area, that is the case. And what's unfortunate is once a program seems to be successful, then the funding seems to get pulled. So perhaps we could all write our MPs and make some recommendations about where we would like to see the focus on funding.
So we do have a couple of questions from the audience, and I think from now, just because there is a list of questions to get through, if like 1 to 3 of you guys would whoever best believes that they would be able to answer. And I know that you have raised your hand, right? Yeah. Oh yeah, if you don't mind.
I know Lisa did. Yeah.
I'm so sorry. There is one question, and after he is done, we will get you to give your question, and then we'll answer it.
Thank you. My name is Colin Sanderson, and I just wanted to bring something to light, kind of what you're saying, and a texture to the idea of the funding. As a Surrey, from Surrey, so as a Surrey Board of Trade member, there's a lot of these network sessions that we go through, and I've been through the Vancouver Board of Trade. And so I guess kind of a question or a thought pattern to put out there is bringing the idea of what EASY is, and I'm very aware of what EASY has done. I'm in an Aboriginal youth care program right now, education program, so we've done some studies on that. Phenomenal. And if you took a program like that or other programs out there and you said, this is what we were dealing with before, how we helped them, what's going on in the community now, and if you kind of broke that down into chunks, right, of what funding capacities could look like. So, and putting that to a group, just like you're doing right now, to a whole bunch of people who are businesses. We have large development corporations coming in here. We have, people who are wanting to invest money into small businesses and large businesses, and if we took some of our issues to them and said, this is what it looks like now, but with some of your help, it would be useful, and this is how it might work. And so I guess in context, has anybody at the table looked at this subject, or has businesses out there that could do that? And I mean, Musqueam Nation has got their golf course, so that might even be somebody you might be able to hit up for something that would go out and work with that community itself, or the youth that are coming from different neighborhoods in there. So just an idea to share is to go to businesses and see what that looks like for helping with the funding. Thank you.
Thank you.
Did you want to go to the question on?
Yeah, I was just waiting to see if. Oh, this is two different links.
Does anybody want to respond to his comments? I think you were more speaking for information purposes, or were you wanting a response from?
Well, I was just kind of throwing it out there as ideas, but also to find out if somebody in your group has worked with businesses to try to bring attention to what some of the issues are. So as constables, have you had an opportunity to work with businesses and get them on understanding what some of your challenges are? Or is somebody from legal aid going out to the businesses and saying, and business people, and saying these are what the challenges are in the legal aid system? Do you see yourself being able to assist as well as with the court workers and probation? So you've had nonprofit experience and you know what those challenges are like. Have you had the opportunity to bring those challenges to businesses?
I know with EASY, we've been looking at levels of government for our funding. I guess there is some funding that we've gotten privately from the Vancouver Police Foundation, who's been very generous and helped us out from time to time when we've needed it. And those are business people in the community. That is something that I think that's worth looking at, the Vancouver Board of Trade as well. It's a great idea, and I'll be looking into that further. Thank you.
Okay, so for the community that had a question, did you want to ask it now?
I take it that's us?
Yeah, sorry. It is a pilot. We'll work out the kinks for the next two.
Understood. Linus Lucas, Port Alberni. I'm kind of curious about young people down in downtown East Side. We have, from our own family, we have a few members of our family living on a downtown East Side, young and old. And I'm just, I happened to be lucky one night in finding my niece down there. And one of the things that came out of that short little visit is that a friend of hers commented how lucky she was to have a member come down to the streets to look for her. And one of the things he ended up commenting on, he was from another tribe in the interior area, and he had said that, I wish that other family members of mine could come down here just to say hello. So one of the things I'm kind of curious about, is there any kind of program of sort that would try and get these younger people who may be going through criminal court systems who are from different areas? Is there any kind of a project or a pilot project that's going to look at trying to get them to go home rather than live the rest of their lives on the street?
Thank you.
I think we have another question after this too.
Okay, now that you have me on, I want to shoot them.
I think I'm in a very different situation from Rick's position. Within Musqueam, it is I can't say enough about how fortunate they are, and I think the community knows how fortunate they are. Unlike most of the downtown east side, where it is like these youth from Port Alberni who are coming from outlying areas, and just it's more or less like a hodgepodge of all different nations in the downtown east side. Where I work in Musqueam, they are all Musqueam. They know who they are, they know their culture, they have a support system everywhere, extended families, and that's why I think in the issue you brought up earlier, they actually do take care of each other. They actually own that golf course. They have their own members working in the golf course. So it's very, very different situation. So I can't really comment on that question in particular, but that's something to keep in mind for if I'm not answering. It's because Musqueam they are taking care of themselves, and that's, maybe we'll touch on it later, like why Musqueam is not, I don't find too many of their youth getting involved in the criminal justice system.
Yeah, there are.
If I could also.
I'm aware of.
Okay, I'll go.
They can hear from our mics.
One of the things that was said by my niece when we were there is that when the police come down to check on them, all they want to do is harass them. All they want to do is say, get the hell home. And there's really, I happened to be there that one time, and the police showed up, and when I sat there and listened, there wasn't really anything that was in any positive manner said to my niece or to her friend or to the other working lady that was there. I'm kind of just wondering, is there anything that's going to be kind of sensitive? Because a lot of our youth, they seem to be experiencing all this negative stuff about, what the hell are you doing down here? Why don't you go home? That seems to be all I'm hearing from a lot of young people about the harassment they get from police agencies.
Well, I have to say that I hear a lot of positive things about our members in the downtown east side, that they actually care a lot about the people that are down there. They actually worry when they don't see individuals that they've become familiar with. And we're one of the most progressive departments in Canada, if not the most progressive. And we actually have undertaken doing training at the Justice Institute as far as like residential school training. And with every graduating class now, I actually participate in that training along with the Aboriginal Community Policing Center Society, just talking to them about the realities of residential school and the realities of what's going on now in the downtown east side. So we are trying to do our best, but we also need we need the separate nations to maybe have outreach workers come and visit the downtown east side and bring their members back as well, to be more involved. I used to volunteer before I got into police work with, it was sort of a reality check for Indigenous peoples that Morris Bates ran out of 312 Main Street. And we would take kids from around the province, and this is a preventative side, take them on tours of the downtown east side. We'd talk to drug dealers, we'd go into the SROs, and a lot of these kids, it would be heartbreaking because we'd be running into siblings or parents. But it showed the reality that the bright city lights weren't all they thought they were. And the smell of feces and people shooting up in the back alleys, that's the reality. And being homeless or living in these horrible little hotels. So I think we have to look, the reality is we have to look at it more from a preventative side, but still we need to have the nations reach out to the people that are from their nations and come to the downtown east side and try to pull them back, get them engaged back with their own communities as well.
Speaker.
Give her the mic.
Right. I'm really bad at this.
Just in line with the outreach. And I believe it's Nemgish that's doing it, actually. Just an idea for community outreach. I think Nemgish is engaged in this outreach work. They send their youth. I don't know at what age they do this, but every year, twice a year, they send their youth, very young, I think like 12, 13 years old, out to the downtown east side to do a walkthrough and to just show them what life is like there and what they need to avoid and aspire to avoid. And apparently it's having a really good impact on the youth in Alert Bay.
And I'll just add briefly, Rick and I had both previously, when I was working at the Vancouver Aboriginal Friendship Center, we sat on a committee that brought together various agencies that were working with Aboriginal youth in the downtown east side, and mostly through working with them through recreation, but also other avenues. But the committee was called I Care, and I think it certainly represented what our values were. And so some of the organizations at the table did have outreach workers, but it was very clear that they're understaffed and underfunded, and there's always a need for more. So that's the difficulty. Is there are some organizations providing outreach work, but there needs to be more of it.
Thank you. Port Alberni, I think we're going to have to move to some questions that are in the room, and as well as the questions that are here on the list. We can come back to you, but for now, if you're able to shut off the mic.
We just have one more question, if that's possible.
Okay.
Okay, hi, my name is Donna. I'm a child and youth mental health worker with the New Channel Tribal Council. And I heard Flora mention only once from one person there that the FASD that a lot of our youth are experiencing. Now, my husband and I have fostered a lot of kids. We've adopted a child with FASD. My question is, how do you work with these people knowing that they need concrete answers versus abstract answers, and the court just gives so many unclear things for the youth, and we end up with so many repeated offenders in that program there, and it doesn't seem to be working, because we're here in a smaller town, and the majority of our kids, once they age out, end up over there in Vancouver. So we need to, I think my question around it is like, how can we effectively work as a province to get where we need to be with our youth when there's so many children suffering from FASD and other mental health issues out there?
I can.
Did you want to speak to that? Okay.
Yeah. So that's one of the biggest benefits, I think, of the GLADU program, is that we're able to get the issue of FASD. And we haven't done that many reports for youth. There's a lot of reasons for that. But we have done a couple, but even for the adults, the conditions that are put on them, they don't work with people with FASD. They just don't. And we provide FASD training for the GLADU writers, so that they understand that there's a need for an external brain. We really need to have support for these people with FASD, to handle their money, to understand that alcohol has a really extreme impact on them, and just the day-to-day living circumstances that they need the support. In the U.S., there's a movement to make it unconstitutional to sentence or charge a person who has FASD, recognizing that this is a huge problem, and it continues to be a problem. And so with the GLADU reports, we're able to get this issue of FASD before the court without an official diagnosis, which is time-consuming and expensive. And I know there's a long wait for that, but if we can corroborate that if the mom admits that she did drink, and if we can get corroboration, then in an informal way we can get this issue to before the court, so that they understand that there needs to be special resources for people with FASD.
Thank you. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. That was. Hold on.
Hello, could I give one comment and now we'll be done here, I think?
We'll be done.
Okay.
They meet their own.
Yeah, hello, my name is Boyd Gallick, Port Alberni T-Shot First Nation, and I work as a native court worker in Port Alberni. And I say hi to Flora Raynes. I do the same work as she does. Port Alberni, we have a good relationship with the RCMP, and one of the issues is bringing to better our community. And one of the issues is bringing our young people home from other communities like Vancouver, Vancouver East Side, just so we can give them a better and healthier life. So this working and talking with you people tonight, I think, helps us out a lot. So we're all in the same canoe. People in the field there as well, we're all in the same canoe, trying to work together. So really appreciate this, and thank you.
Thank you. I know that I have a question behind me. Lena, did you still want to?
I just wanted to ask if you, for the program funding for the youth programs, because I'm a youth participant for both of those programs, and do you have youth showing the need and the changes that it made for them to keep the program going, or to keep the program to be funded again? Because I know for Easy, this weekend is going to be the last one, and they say it's going to be closed for good, and I don't know if that's going to be how it is. And I don't know, just because I've also been on the CCAY council, I know kind of learning all the requirements to get funded from the government, and I don't know, it's kind of sad for me because these programs are a safe place for me to go to, and
So that program actually has a couple of challenges. One is the location that it's at. That building is going to be redeveloped and torn down, so we can't stay there anymore as well. And the city has actually been a very generous partner. They gave us that space free of charge, and our federal funding ran out a year ago. I guess it was a little over a year ago. But then the province stepped in. But we were working with a lot smaller budget, so unless, and it doesn't look like it's going to happen, that program will cease to exist, and hopefully as a community we can come together and try to reapply and with the federal government and try to fit in some different guidelines, even though we've shown that these guidelines work. There's not much we can do. We've been lobbying for months to try to get funding for it.
But my main question was, do you have the youth actually going out to show that they want the program to keep running? Or?
They're talking about doing a demonstration. Yeah. Definitely the youth have shown through their actions and their lifestyle changes and decision making that the program works. The proof is in the way the buy-in to the program.
Thank you. I hope that answers your question. Okay.
Hi, my name is Kathleen. My comment is more on funding. I guess with not-for-profits and knowing sometimes that they're cuts from government and they're not always the most sustainable methods of funding, and government can cut things at any time. I guess my question is, do you look at more sustainable models of funding? And then again, I've seen more public-private partnerships coming up. And do you go and engage with the local Chamber of Commerce and some of the communities and different, resource companies or what have you, and try to get sponsorship that way? Because I know so many of them have community investment projects. So I don't know.
We have pockets of funding here and there, but the reality is we're looking at, to do the program properly, we're looking at $400,000 a year. And it needs to be consistent funding. It shouldn't be put in a position where it has to go looking for little pockets of money to make up that $400,000. We need government to step up and be a long-term partner.
Yeah, I think that, again, I'm very fortunate. In Musqueam, they actually have a grant writer that's dedicated to write grants, to seek funding for all their different programs. And they also have partnerships with businesses. They're quite involved in what's called the perimeter road that's being built for the trucking industry. They have a number of their community members working within there, and also Kiewit, who is one of the main businesses, is actually giving money to the community to help out with a lot of their programming. So again, very fortunate because they are, one government more or less that can do that and seek out the funding and have that grant writer who is phenomenal. It's just always applying and finding out where we can use this grant and how we can write it in, and she's helped me through writing a couple of the grants myself, and fabulous. So
we actually do have a grant writer, but when we're talking about nations, they also have business interests with a lot of those people that they can go to look for partnerships or with the urban Aboriginal community. Like, who are they? Where are they? Where do they spend their money? Do you know what I mean? Like, we're talking about 12,000 people. We'll share this one.
Okay, perfect. So, I mean, as panelists, you guys, if you look through your questions, you guys have kind of answered 2, 3, 4, and some of these questions were, what community programming is available, and they've mentioned quite a few to you guys. We've also talked about what's lacking for these programs, what makes programs successful, what doesn't make these programs successful, who needs to be involved, and what are the resources to get these programs up and running. And so we can kind of streamline to the other questions. Question number 6, what is your experience with Aboriginal youth entering and exiting the criminal justice system? There was a question that was sent through my phone that was, have you worked with a youth in particular and seen them go on that journey, or and what has that looked like? And the question was pretty vague, but that's kind of what, yeah.
I guess I'll just speak to that quickly. I mean, having kind of transitioned from having been a youth probation officer to then doing more preventative work in the community to now transitioning back to an adult probation officer, I see a lot of the families in the community that I'd seen them when they were youth and now are adults and having their own children. And I guess one of the challenges to the job is always that the youth that are doing well, we don't end up seeing anymore because they're off, not involved in the criminal justice system, doing other things. And so it sometimes can skew your perspective about, whether you're having any success or not, or any positive outcomes. And so, I think the important thing is to transition out of the system, and a lot of it is, programming where you get skilled, you develop skills. So some youth just grow out of the offending, right? Some of them get burnt out from, I had fun when I was 13 stealing cars and getting in chases, and some of them just burn out of it, right? Burn out of the system and look to other things. But the ones that now you see continuously coming back as adults, often it is because of their substance use issues. Often it is because of their mental health issues. And so it's really the task is getting them connected to the support services that they need to make lasting changes in their lives. And also recognizing for some people, it's a lifelong challenge, right? I come from a family where my sister has schizophrenia, and for years she wouldn't take her medication, and she was in and out of Riverview Hospital and struggled, and for the past several years she takes her medication. So affecting change happens over time. It happens with getting the right supports in place and addressing kind of the core issues that are affecting that person's life. Sometimes it's poverty, and they haven't worked for a long time, and they're stealing to support both to feed themselves and maybe to feed their family. And so it's connecting them to a job program or to helping them take a look at what their skill set is. And so, yeah, I think just in a general way, it's really helping people through the criminal justice system is largely helping them recognize what their offending cycle is, where they're struggling to get out of the system. Our goal is always to get people out of the system, not pull people in. And so it's doing what we can to connect people to the resources that address their underlying issues.
Thank you. Kind of as a brief thing before we get to this gentleman's question is Gerald and I, Gerald, if you can raise your hand, we do have coffee and tea and snacks, so if you want anything, if you just raise your hand and then we can come to you instead of kind of rifling through people coming down, because I recognize that some of you guys might be a little bit hungry. Here you go.
On that note, let's take another question. Hi, everyone. My name is Andrew Van Eden. I'm the justice worker at Tsleil-Waututh over on the North Shore. And I have a really exciting job in that I get to assist and support young people and adults in the community through this big justice system. We have the Integrated First Nations Police Unit on the North Shore, which is 6 dedicated officers who provide a supportive role in Squamish and Tsleil-Waututh communities. We have First Nations Court sitting in North Vancouver Provincial Court, the second one in the province. Now there's 3, Kamloops is on board. So those are exciting developments, and those are really good opportunities that give us a bit more of a leg up. But that system is still so broken. And even when we talk about First Nation Court, and I mean, I'm there on a regular basis. Janet Baker's there as a native court worker. There's really great people doing great things, but one of those big issues is around Gladue reports. One of those big issues is around, we know the legislation is there. We know the opportunity is supposed to be there for Aboriginal people in the system. We know that when it comes time for sentencing, certain things have to be considered. But where we struggle is that we can't get a Gladue report done on the North Shore. It's really almost next to impossible, because I know that there's limited funds, there's limited writers, there's limited opportunities to do that. So what we end up getting stuck with are, and sorry for the probation officers in here, I'm just going to throw you all under the bus right now. What we end up getting are the pre-sentence reports that probation officers do, and you know, good-intentioned probation officers who have a good rapport with their client will give you a good report. But in the event that that's not the case, and often it isn't with young people, what's going to come out in that pre-sentence report? So what we kind of get is that Gladue component. For those of you who deal with the court system at all, you get a pre-sentence report with a Gladue component. It's supposed to be an extra few lines that speaks to your Aboriginal identity and the resources that are available to you in your community if you're near your community. What's really disheartening is that in the North Shore Probation does not believe in including residential school effects in the Gladue component. If you didn't attend residential school yourself, they don't consider it something worth putting in the report. That's where a Gladue component to a pre-sentence report completely fails the whole situation. That's where we need the ability to have a Gladue report there. So I don't know, Pamela, I'm so excited you're here tonight. I know you're going to solve all my problems and answer all my questions. I don't know what the answer to that is. I don't know where we're finding success or where we're moving towards, if funding is becoming another limitation, but I'm hoping you can just speak to a little bit more around Gladue and what hope is on the horizon for that.
Thank you. And on that note, Pamela, that was number 10, but if you wanted to jump back to that, then you guys can jump back to 9 as maybe a wrap up. So the floor is yours.
Yikes. Yes, I certainly understand the importance of Gladue reports, and this whole program came from one advocate in Chilcotin country who heard from a lawyer. She was a justice worker. She heard from a lawyer that she worked with about Gladue, about the Gladue decision. And so the program has grown over the last 3 years from where I thought I could just go out and do workshops and tell the Aboriginal communities about the Gladue decision, and they would then be able to write the reports. And so now we're doing the training. And with the success of the Gladue program, we also have pushback from the Crown and also the bench. So we're getting adverse court decisions that allege that our Gladue reports are advocacy pieces, and they're not. And some of the courts are refusing to give the reports weight. So that's what we're dealing with lack of funding, lack of writers, a need for more training, a need for training in the Aboriginal community, for judges and for lawyers as well. So and yes, the biggest problem is funding. I've scraped together funding, and also the Law Foundation have given me funding for about 120 reports. That doesn't even scratch the surface of the need, and I'm gratified that there is this understanding of the importance of Gladue reports. That's really amazing. But I don't know how many hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of PSRs that are done with the Gladue report compared to my very small 120 reports a year. So I've been forced to prioritize and actually have some kind of quota system where I approve about 6 reports a month for the entire province. And so I'm trying to prioritize women and youth if the ministry would allow us to do reports for youth, and also prioritize people with FASD. So those are my priorities right now, and looking at lengthy sentences. So the priority list is it's just so difficult. I can't tell you how difficult it is, and seeing these requests, it's just absolutely heartbreaking. I'm doing my best. That's all I can tell you right now. I have a fantastic team, and we're doing our best, and I'm hoping that next year we will have more funding, and every year we'll have more funding, but I just don't know. I wanted to also talk about the story about Jamie Tanis Gladue. It's just such an interesting story that happened back in 1998 in Nanaimo. She was a Cree woman who didn't have status, non-status, and she was accused of second-degree murder of her common law partner, and she was pregnant at the time. And the court at the time said, the judge said, well, what about the 718(2)E, this criminal code that says that we need to look at the circumstances of Aboriginal people? And the court said, well, and the lawyer said, well, she's non-status, she's not living on reserve, she's disconnected from her community, so Gladue doesn't, or so 718(2)E doesn't apply. And that's exactly why we need 718(2)E, and that's what the Supreme Court decision said with her decision, with the Gladue decision, is that it's because of the colonialist system, it's because of the disconnection from culture and language and family that Aboriginal people are being incarcerated at frightening rates. And for women, it's a crisis. Elizabeth Fry did a snapshot of Aboriginal woman in prison. She's 27 years old. She has 3 kids. She grew up with domestic violence, seeing domestic violence between her with her mom and dad, and so she marries into domestic violence and experiences it herself. And she gets into the sex trade and substance abuse, and so she's incarcerated. And what happens to those 3 kids? It's the same cycle over again. And the number of Aboriginal women in prison since the Gladue decision has increased 131%. So what, GLADU in practice, when I always say that with a question mark. It hasn't been, it's a remedy. It's meant to be a remedy. That's what the Supreme Court of Canada said, but it hasn't been put into practice. And that's what I see in the small way, in the small GLADU program, that we have been able to affect change. That when we do have GLADU reports for Aboriginal offenders, it makes a difference. We've reduced the rate of incarceration. We've actually reduced the sentencing and increased rehabilitation and other healing plans. So it has made a difference, and I can definitely say that. So that's GLADU. That's just like a really fast and hard overview of the GLADU program that I have. Another really good outcome of this is that there's an increase in Aboriginal courts. There's actually 4 Aboriginal courts. There's another one that's starting in April. Judge Wood is starting an Aboriginal court in Duncan on the Cowichan Reserve. So we have one in Kamloops that started this month. And I've been pushing that rock up the hill to working with the Linda Thomas, the Kamloops legal counsel, to try to get an Aboriginal court there. And the clouds parted and the sun came out, and lo and behold, the court sat in this week. On Monday, it was the first sitting of that court, and that's what I envision is to having these First Nations court all over the province, because they are making a difference. They're a restorative justice approach, and Judge Buller Bennett, bless her heart for starting the first court in New West, the first Nations court in New West. I think it's going on 7 years now. She just said, "Let's do it." And I urge any of you to just come to the sitting. The court sits once a month in New West, and it's just an amazing experience. The most important part of that court is that there's elders there. The court is supported by a council of elders, and they have input that carries a lot of weight with the court about how to develop a healing plan for that offender. And I'm hoping that I can drag my friend right here into attending the court in New West to really start working with youth. It's an adult court, it's a sentencing court, it's not a trial court, it's disposition, but still it's about restorative justice. And I think we really need to I'm hoping that we have youth in that court. I know the court in Duncan is starting as a youth court, and it will expand to adults as well. So that's, if you have any questions, as I said before, just contact me. I know that it can be, that's a lot of information in a small amount of time.
Thank you. Doug has a question, and then there's another question.
Okay, I know it's not a perfect system, so maybe you can comment. Are we going to have more challenges like LADU?
Well, actually, LADU resulted in EPLI, so that was a really good decision. We have the Lawson. Lawson went through the Court of Appeal, and the Court of Appeal agreed with Crown that that was an advocacy piece, and that there was no weight given to the report. And now, right now, we're looking at the Florence decision, and all bets are off. I don't know, but I do know this: that we're answering the criticisms that the Crown and the bench has put before us, and we're going to make this program bulletproof. And I can tell you that right now.
Thank you. And we have another question.
Hi. My name is Tracy Michelle, and I know that there's a lot of discussion on FASD, and FASD really has a big impact in a lot of the Aboriginal communities and affects a lot of the Earl, I don't know who that is. Who's Earl? Rural and urban communities. And I think that one of the significance behind the GLADU case was legal counsel for the defense showed a news clipping to the judge and said, these are the high level of our Aboriginal inmates who are Aboriginal. We have to change it. And I think that was what it took to introduce GLADU in the court system. And I know that there's big challenges in looking at FASD. One, it's hard to recognize it. It's very limited in terms of how we can get assessments. I really enjoy talking. I don't know why I'm so nervous. Can somebody dance for me or something? But you know, the reality is we need to open our eyes too and just recognize when there is a need, and are there any types of supports and services? Are there different areas where we can get assessments and people can get their needs met if they have FASD? And the symptom is hidden. Sometimes it's apparent and other times it's not so apparent. So we have the Flora.
Yes.
She mentioned about the high number of children in care. So, and the homelessness issue was mentioned. We have runaways, high school dropouts, and people who had the potential of getting the assessments miss that mark, and then they end up on the streets, reinstitutionalized in prison. So what can be done in terms of bringing this type of data to the court system?
Well, as a native court worker, if I notice that there's certain behaviors that the youth has, such as not understanding the court system, although it's been explained several times, memory is a big thing. I find is they don't remember things correctly, or time can be another challenge that some of the youth who have FASD encounter. And so to get these youth assessed, I then liaise with the youth worker, who's another terminology for probation officer in youth court, because in youth court the youth workers can make a referral to the Asante clinic and get an assessment done there. And but it's the time that it takes to get that assessment done can be quite lengthy. I think I've been waiting for one youth for a year now. The other way that youth can get assessed is by your doctor recommending you to go see a pediatrician, and then the pediatrician then making a referral over to the children's hospital. And those referrals need to happen before, I think, the youth is 19 years old. So those are a couple of the ways that youth can get assessed. Now, services that are being offered at the courts, unfortunately, well, I did have one resource that was very effective. She was a fetal alcohol syndrome disorder key outreach worker from the Children's Foundation. Unfortunately, it was her style of work that was made her so dynamic. She was like that, Jiminy Cricket, that you carry on your shoulder, because she was willing to work all hours. She would get calls on her cell phone at different times, and her youth trying to figure out, well, what do I do? And sometimes it's at 1 o'clock in the morning. That's what we need, is we need workers who will be available to do outreach in that sense. She also assisted me in getting our three common clients into treatment, And when things started to fall apart, since they were local treatment, she went out there and took them for a ride or talked with them. She also came with me to meetings. One of the youth had a child, and so she came to meetings with the ministry. And when they were trying to get her to sign something, I always wanted her to explain what the meaning was before she signed anything. Thank you.
Thanks, Laura. So we're kind of...
Sorry, something really exciting is happening like right now in North Vancouver that I just wanted to get out there on that very topic. And I know the other two communities are offline, so I'm just going to shout out.
Okay.
But in North Vancouver Court, they recognize that limitation around FASD, and they've actually asked for Crown Defense, Judiciary, Probation, Native Court Worker, all of us to come together at a round table to look at how can we write probation orders or sentencing orders in a language that works for persons with FASD so they can understand them better instead of just telling them the same thing 3 different times. How can we make sure that all those professionals who are in that courtroom interacting with that person, having a decision in their life, have a better understanding, a better training and education around FASD. So I think it's something that each individual courthouse should take on or can take on to ensure that we do have the knowledge we need to have, because sentencing somebody is kind of a big deal and it's an important impact on their life. And I think it's a good way for us to go forward that way.
We don't have to speak in the microphone anymore. Because I wanted to say that it is true about the Asante Center. The Asante Center does do assessments for persons with FASD, but if you reach the age of 19 or older, it can be a very costly process. It could be upwards of $5,000. And there are no bands or agencies or friendship centers that have those type of resources to do an assessment for FASD. And one of the challenges behind that is you continue to have issues that relate to justice and homelessness and poverty. And I think that it's really unfortunate. And another challenge also is with FASD, sometimes it requires an admittance that a mom did drink alcohol during pregnancy. And there is a lot of stigma and behind it. So, you know, we as a community have some responsibilities to, you know, if we could recognize where that need is there to see if we can show some sort of support and make some referrals or have some discussions and help people in these situations.
Thank you. Sorry, I was just multitasking between getting them to understand and here to understand. I do want to start closing a bit. If there's any more questions in the, yeah?
Just had a quick question. Children within the MCFD, as they become, whether they're children or they become adults, do they have an opportunity to sort of, for lack of better words, be streamlined through that FASD process or other psych assessments? Because it would stand to reason, regardless of what the mother was doing, the child being able to demonstrate that they know what their mother was doing would kind of be out there. If the child's been raised or has been adapted into the MCFD system, it would stand to reason that there was issues there. So your experience, is it sometimes easier to work with that system, or did that MCFD bureaucracy kind of fight against you when you're trying to work with youth through the processes?
The one that I'm waiting for over a year now is in the care of the ministry at this time, and it is a challenge because I think the ministry also has the challenge of the parent needs to be involved in this, because the parent is the one that was pregnant and carrying the child, so they need to make some comment about what their usage was or whether they drank during the pregnancy. So that's one of the challenges that we have with kids that are in the care of the ministry. the Asante Clinic does have access to the records through the ministry, is my understanding, because I've heard them referring to materials there. So I don't think it streamlines it, though.
Thank you. Yes.
I have a question as a comment to that. In my previous work, I became very aware, I think a lot of you might already know this, that FASD is exceptionally difficult to diagnose unless there is admission by the parent that they were drinking or some obvious physical features. And that physical indication of FASD only happens, I think, 3 days within the pregnancy. So
19 to 21 days of the pregnancy.
Difficult to even get that diagnosis. Yes, you may be able to access the service, but unless there is, admission, it may never be possible to actually prove that that's actually the cause.
And the void increases when a child, an Aboriginal child, is in care who's been adopted, and you kind of lose that connection in most cases.
Yes.
Just a quick comment. Being a parent of 3 daughters, all 3 daughters were put in programs in mainstream. They were put in Aboriginal programs, not regular curriculum as everybody else would be. And they were diagnosed as FASD when I never drank anything in any pregnancies. And they're also put in these programs saying that they were slow learners, that they had this. So in saying that, I have my eldest is at UBC in her 3rd year. My 25-year-old is starting at UBC, and my 16-year-old is going to be graduating this year, a top 10 percentile of her class in New West. So, I mean, the only reason that those things were brought up was because of the funding that they would get for these kids for alternate programs and being placed in these programs right through the whole system until a parent could stand up and say, hey, this is not the way it's supposed to be. I strongly believe that a lot of kids have been misdiagnosed, and maybe they believe it when they're told that. I don't know, but for me personally, that's my experience.
Thank you.
Sometimes I find that the term FASD is used on persons that have not had an official diagnosis. So I usually try to find out if there is a diagnosis, and if at all possible, I do try to get a copy of that with the permission of the youth and the parent, because I do know that once they go to adult court, you cannot get an assessment done unless, as you say, it costs $5,000. And when I was in adult court, I spent a day and a half on the phone trying to find funding for youth or for a young adult.
Thank you. So I guess in closing, I wanted to reiterate and come back to kind of why I put this event on and why I'm so open about sharing my story. I don't shy from my history, and I don't shy from the family backgrounds and the dynamics that I've encountered at all. And so really it's removing the stigma and the stereotypes that come with Aboriginal youth and working with Aboriginal youth. To share a quick story, I grew up, as I'd mentioned, with a lot of detriments in my family, and I had an officer named Mike and Amy Cook who lived next door to me in grade 2 and 3, and they moved, unfortunately. But those were key people in my life, and key people like my coaches kept coming up, Larry Belton at Langara College, and there's many more people that came up. And so what I wanted to bring awareness to everyone in this room is that these Aboriginal youth can be me, that these stories they do not have to be a common story about being a national player in a sport, getting a degree, getting a PhD, opening a business, starting a community program. These don't need to be like rare cases in our community. These are cases that that can happen all the time, and we just need the right people and the right dialogue and the right conversations to make this happen. So, and thank you guys for coming. In closing, I wanted each of the panelists maybe to speak briefly, about 2 to 3 minutes, about Laura's laughing at me now. Because these are students and these are people who work in direct contact with Aboriginal youth and Aboriginal people in general, and kind of what advice would you give them in working? I know you guys had talked about that relationship and that it takes time and to build that trust, because there is a lot of distrust in Aboriginal communities. The floor is yours. Thank you.
I think sorry. Yeah, again, it is just building that relationship, and I think most of us, like probation, police, we historically not someone that's the friendly face from the Aboriginal community, right? There was so we have like that extra barrier to to get over, and within Musqueam, within the downtown east side, just being that friendly face that actually cares and is going to be there day after day to see how you're doing. And like there have been a couple of situations in Musqueam shortly after I got there, playing soccer with some of these kids and watching a couple of them go, and I'm going, wow, where else do you play? And they go, well, nowhere. We just play native ball. And I'm like, no. Do you realize your potential that you have? You could walk onto any college and walk on there, and you could play and get your education paid for. And it actually stuck with one fellow who had, he was having some alcohol issues and anger issues when he was drinking, and rather than focus on that, I focused him on, you know what, you need to focus on your gift. Your gift is you're a great soccer player, you're an athlete. You need to, work on that gift, and if you have to leave the community, do it. And he actually left, and he went to play for VIU on the island, and he only played for 1 year there, but what a difference in his life it made. They became national champions. He played on that national championship team, changed his life, and he came back to the community. Now he's like alcohol free, don't have any issues with him. He's a good family person and works. And that's all it took, was just a little time spent with him to focus on some positive things, not focus on, what you're doing wrong. Because I mean, as a coach, I do that same approach as well. Like, focus on the positives, not the negative.
I'm not sure if you know, but in the Western Canadian provinces, I think the average is close to 70% of the inmates are Aboriginal, and we're less than 4% of the population. So it's an epidemic. I guess for me, I get really involved with the youth that I work with. I do a lot of one-to-one stuff with a lot of the youth, and that's what made a difference in my life. I could have become a drug dealer or whatever if it hadn't been to certain individuals that came along in my life. So just really, with the youth that you work with, if you have the opportunity, really take a vested interest, just because that's what they really need, is a consistent role model in their life. Yeah, it's just
become their grandpa.
Yeah, pretty much.
When I first started working for Legal Aid, I lived in Kitsilano, and I was taking out the garbage in my building, and I saw this young Aboriginal person pushing a grocery cart, collecting bottles, and he wouldn't make eye contact with me. He was just, I could just feel the shame rolling off him, and that's why I do what I'm doing. I remember that person, and a couple of times, believe me, I've wanted to give up, just with these bad court decisions and just the challenges of funding. But I've been told by my team that giving up is not an option. So that's what I urge you to think about. Like, get inspired by something and stick with it, and don't give up on your communities. They deserve your support.
I think similarly what I wanted to say is really be true to your values and be passionate about what you do. And, I think it's important, be a good listener, be a good learner. Don't, we're here as a panel, but everybody has expertise, everybody has knowledge and ability they bring to their work. And, I think an important thing for me is when I started working with the Aboriginal community is to really break down barriers of the stereotypes and thinking of everybody as one way. The Aboriginal community is very diverse, and so respecting each individual you work with, each youth you work with as an individual. Yes, they may be from a certain band. Yes, they may have a certain appearance, but they have their own individual needs as well, and respecting them as individuals is really, I think, an important piece of that work.
My recommendation would be to encourage youth to reconnect with their dreams that they had as children and to follow those dreams, because at some point in their life they've lost their dreams, and they need to be encouraged to reconnect with that, because as a child their life was full of possibilities, but somehow they've dwindled down to very little. I would also encourage you to help the youth take power back into their lives. One of the courts where they feel that they have the least power because they're not only under their parents' guidance or the social worker's guidance, but also the probation officer and the judge tells them what to do. Help them recognize when they can take power, the power of choice back into their lives, the power to make better choices or different choices, the power to learn from their mistakes. And it's just that they may have veered off of their path, and helping them to gain their pathway back to a better path. Thank you.
Thank you.
Was I 2 minutes?
I wanted to thank first and foremost the panelists for coming here and agreeing with me. It hasn't been easy to create these events. The inception of these events actually happened with a comment that a student had made with me last semester. And I humbled that comment, and it was about my education getting paid for and the argument that a lot of our youth are ending up on the street. And I'd explained to him, and I think it was a really great explanation, that no, in fact, I'm not getting my education paid for. In fact, I work 2 jobs and go to school, and I sit on 5 board committees, and I volunteer. So, I mean, it's not common, but I mean, and so I was sitting at home during Christmas time, and I was talking to my parents about it, and then on Christmas Eve, I was like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to make this happen. So I literally looked through all of my email list and who I've emailed and who I know through the Friendship Center and Anya and Corrections and VPD and who I've met and people I've literally just Googled online, and I'm starting to build a relationship with them. And so I do really honor and appreciate everyone that has taken their time. To have an MCFD representative here has been really great because they've been really a big part of my life, and to see that if you invest your time into these youth, this is what can happen and this is what can be done. And I really want to thank UBC Learning Circle for making this partnership and for the communities being able to connect through Adobe. And thank you, our tech guy, who's made this all possible for the communities to connect, because it's opportunities like this in Vancouver and across the province that our communities can't connect to. And so they don't even have that dialogue between organizations that they can relate to their community members, or ideas and inceptions that will start from these conversations. Oh, I will take this and let's create this, or let's have a conversation with our band office about this. I am going to hand over the mic to Crystal, and she's just going to finish off with some closing remarks. Thank you.
Well, I want to thank Elisa. It's been a great evening. And on behalf of the UBC Learning Circle, we always welcome feedback. We always welcome new ideas and speakers, workshop series that you would like to see brought to communities. And like I said in the beginning, this is our first event here where we have had a live audience. So definitely would like to do more partnerships. And we do have another session on March 27th. So do watch for that. Become a part of the UBC Learning Circle mail-out list. And I'm not sure how effective our advertising actually was. And Elisa and I had that discussion briefly about where you may have seen this event advertised, because the Learning Circle is being more exposed and is getting out there. So we do welcome the feedback. Feedback is really important. And like we talked about tonight, the funding is really important. That, you know, we're in the midst of trying to secure some more funding for, you know, our role and servicing the communities and bringing these types of initiatives forward to communities via the Adobe connection and bringing it to life. So if any of you want to be added on to the mail-out list, just email me at crystal.morris@ubc.ca, and I'll ensure that our tech support and our program assistant puts you on that mail-out list, or follow us on Twitter, look for us on Facebook, because those pieces are important. And as well, you know, just summarizing, you know, the evening and tying it all together. You know, I appreciate everybody's stories that's been told here, because you're all doing great jobs in your positions, and I can feel it, I can sense it. You know, you're all in where you're meant to be. Your hearts are all in the right places, trying to make changes for the Aboriginal communities, and I appreciate that about all of you. And you know, the sharing of the stories and giving back to the community. And this is where change starts. Elisa, you've done a fabulous job. So thank you very much for coming out tonight, and I appreciate all your support.